brutal terrorist shot in cold blood a young, beautiful couple, Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram. Yaron had just bought an engagement ring for Sarah. He was planning to give it to her in Jerusalem next week. They were planning to start a new and happy life together. Well, that tragically did not happen. Yaron and Sarah weren't the victims of a random crime. The terrorist who cruelly gunned them down did so for one reason and one reason alone. He wanted to kill Jews. And as he was taken away, he chanted, "Free Palestine." For these neo-Nazis, Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler. They don't want a Palestinian state. They want to destroy the Jewish state. They want to annihilate the Jewish people who've been in the land of Israel for 3,500 years. I could never understand how this simple truth evades the leaders of France, Britain, Canada, and others. I say to President Macron, Prime Minister Carney, and Prime Minister Starmer, when mass murderers, rapists, baby killers, and kidnappers thank you, you're on the wrong side of justice. You're on the wrong side of humanity. And you're on the wrong side of history. Now, these leaders may think that they're advancing peace. They're not. They're emboldening Hamas to continue fighting forever. And they give them hope to establish a second Palestinian state, from which Hamas will again seek to destroy the Jewish state. And mind you, it's not going to be a state free of Hamas. When you establish a Palestinian state, we've seen it. The radicals take over. Iran sends them in and they take over. So don't give us this talk. It'll be a peaceful Palestinian state. It won't be. These and other leaders have bought into Hamas's propaganda that says Israel is starving Palestinian children. And not only is Hamas putting out this lie, a few days ago, a top UN official said that 14,000 Palestinian babies would die in 48 hours. You see, many international institutions are complicit in spreading this lie. The press repeats it, the mob believed it, and a young couple is then brutally gunned down in Washington.
How are you going to be telling your own people that a genocidal war criminal is a brave man and give him standing ovations and give him billions upon billions of your people's money precisely to continue committing crimes against humanity and not expect them to learn the lesson that lawless violence is legitimate? Especially when you have blatantly showed them that diplomacy doesn't work, economic pressure doesn't work with you, public opinion doesn't work with you, the law doesn't work with you, no legal means, no diplomatic means, no economic means, no popular means, no peaceful means can ever dislodge your fangs from the people of Gaza. Well, I think you want to drive people into desperation, to do desperate acts, precisely so that you can crack down on them even more. So you can double down and act even worse than you've already been acting all this time. Never mind about the other 5 people who got shot in Washington, D.C. over just the last week or so. But those were just senseless killings, so that's fine. But this one had symbolism. This one can be exploited for political reasons. The American government doesn't even care about Americans being killed in America unless the narrative is suitable. This isn't about one shooting. This is about silencing 600 days of justified outrage and about criminalizing sympathy with the victims of genocide. It's about shutting down the voices that refuse to pretend that Israel is the victim. How many African Americans are killed by the police and nothing moves the needle? But you let one bullet fly in the direction of your imperial narrative and suddenly the whole machinery comes to life. Suddenly the think tanks are drafting policy briefs. Suddenly Congress is passing resolutions. Suddenly terrorism is back on the menu. Who worked at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Him and his girlfriend died apparently from a shooting in D.C. and the alleged shooter shouted "Free Palestine" while he was being arrested at the scene. Now obviously there's going to be conspiracy theories about this, about it being potentially a false flag operation and so forth, since Israel is increasingly losing Western support and Netanyahu is more desperate than he has ever been to try to save himself from imminent self-destruction. So it's not implausible, but in my opinion, unless and until there's real evidence to the contrary, then the explanation for the shooting should just be accepted. The obvious, apparent explanation should be accepted. It was probably a lone gunman who was probably politically motivated, just like Luigi Mangione. And murder is a very American problem-solving instinct. You know, we're almost 600 days into the demonic genocide in Gaza being perpetrated by Israel and by the United States. That's 50 months of wanton, inhuman carnage playing out on everyone's smartphones, on everyone's social media platforms. It's the most documented, the most visible, the most seen genocide in history. Israeli troops just shot at European diplomats just a day or so ago. There are daily massacres in Gaza. And Netanyahu has declared his explicit desire to completely wipe out the Palestinians in the most unequivocal language that any of us has heard since Hitler. And Donald Trump has signaled his absolute endorsement of ethnic cleansing. And at the same time, he's inventing allegations of ethnic cleansing against South Africa and pretending to be outraged about it. Look, you can't impose this kind of cognitive dissonance, this kind of hypocrisy, this kind of extreme moral and mental sadism on your population and not have some fuses short circuit, especially when your population is already habituated to violence and they're already disproportionately suffering from mental and psychological illnesses across the population. And they're already under enormous tension and pressure regarding their own economic situation. I mean, Americans are barely holding on to their sanity as it is. Your whole society seems like it's a social engineering project to see how much gaslighting, how much emotional abuse, and how much dysfunction human beings can be forced to take before they either implode or explode. You ban people from boycotting, you crack down on protests, you jail and deport protesters, you ignore international law, you dismiss the institutions of international law, while you're basically steering people towards violence. That whole government, the American government, the whole government is acting like those FBI agents who coax and conspire and entrap people in violent plots of their own making. You punish all peaceful means of protest, and then you escalate in the policies that are being protested. And like I said, you do nothing but teach violence to your people all day, every day, in your media, in your music, in your movies, in your games, and in your whole approach to the world. So how do you think that's going to turn out? You know? How are you going to be telling your own people that a genocidal war criminal is a brave man and give him standing ovations and give him billions upon billions of your people's money precisely to continue committing crimes against humanity and not expect them to learn the lesson that lawless violence is legitimate? Especially when you have blatantly showed them that diplomacy doesn't work, economic pressure doesn't work with you, public opinion doesn't work with you, the law doesn't work with you, no legal means, no diplomatic means, no economic means, no popular means, no peaceful means can ever dislodge your fangs from the people of Gaza. Well, I think you want to drive people into desperation, to do desperate acts, precisely so that you can crack down on them even more. So you can double down and act even worse than you've already been acting all this time. And then you're going to grandstand now about how outrageous the shooting was in Washington, D.C., as if you care about human life at all. I mean, never mind about the other 5 people who got shot in Washington, D.C. over just the last week or so. But those were just senseless killings, so that's fine. But this one had symbolism. This one can be exploited for political reasons. So now you care. Now your ideological mourning kicks in. Now the headlines can stretch across the continents. Now the hand-wringing can begin about the dangers of radicalization and hate speech and anti-Semitism and so forth. But let's be honest, this isn't grief, it's an opportunity. It's not outrage, it's leverage. The truth is, the American government doesn't even care about Americans being killed in America unless the narrative is suitable. I mean, how many mass shootings, how many school massacres, how many African Americans are killed by the police and nothing moves the needle? But you let one bullet fly in the direction of your imperial narrative and suddenly the whole machinery comes to life. Suddenly the think tanks are drafting policy briefs. Suddenly Congress is passing resolutions. Suddenly terrorism is back on the menu. And all of it, of course, pointing in one direction, to suppress dissent. So let's be real. This isn't about one shooting. This is about silencing 600 days of justified outrage and about criminalizing sympathy with the victims of genocide. It's about shutting down the voices that refuse to pretend that Israel is the victim. And yes, if it turns out that it was a false flag, and again, I'm not saying that it was, but if it was, it wouldn't be the first time, and it wouldn't be shocking. Because for a regime that is founded on myth and maintained by deception, staging another scene would just be par for the course. Because that's what you do. You know, that's what you do when your survival depends upon manufacturing moral capital from corpses. That's what you do when your legitimacy is completely bankrupt and the only currency you have left is fear. But whether this was orchestrated or not, one thing is clear, it was inevitable. Not because people are inherently violent, no, but because your entire system has systematically blocked every nonviolent path. Because your entire society has been primed, or has been cultivated for cruelty. Because for 600 days, you have demanded that the world watch a live-streamed genocide and then cheer for the murderers. You've made empathy a crime. You've made protest illegal. You've made justice unreachable. And now you want to cry foul when your own citizens finally break under the weight of your lies. No. You don't get to play victim now. You don't get to cry terror when you're the ones who have institutionalized terror financially, militarily, psychologically, economically in every corner of this planet. You don't get to moralize about violence when you send hellfire missiles against tents. You don't get to quote Martin Luther King when you ban students from even saying Free Palestine. You don't get to invoke the sanctity of life when you funded the desecration of life for nearly 2 straight years with no remorse. If you want peace, then stop blocking the path to peace. If you want nonviolence, then stop criminalizing nonviolence. If you want to stop the spread of hate, then stop building your empire on hate. Because what you're seeing now in America, what you just saw in Washington, D.C., whether it was real or orchestrated, that's not the disease, that's the symptom. The disease is you, is your so-called civilization. And until you stop infecting the world with your moral rot, then you can't be shocked when that sickness comes home.